Well, hello, everyone. This is Mark Tinsley, and you're joining us on a special episode of Clean Slate, where we talk about the real issues of the church with real people through real talk. And we have an exciting episode today, so let's get started. You know, even the casual observer of the news has probably run across at least one article about Mr. Jerry Falwell Jr., the president of Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. From the New York Times to the Washington Post to Rolling Stones to Reuters to Inside Higher Education to USA Today and others, media sources from around America have launched a veritable online assault on Mr. Falwell that culminated most recently in an article by Politico magazine that accused him of things like sexual indiscretions with his wife Becky, along with other personal, moral, and ethical breaches, shady business dealings using the resources of his nonprofit, Liberty University, political corruption related to the 2016 U.S. presidential election, overseeing a culture of fear in his leadership of the faculty and staff at Liberty University, and a host of other questionable behaviors. All of these matters lead those on the outside to ask, what's going on at Liberty University, and is Mr. Jerry Falwell Jr. the right man to lead one of America's most prominent institutions of Christian higher education? Well, it's not only outsiders who are asking these questions. In fact, some students have begun to raise their voices. And on Friday, September 13th, 2019, a group of students who call themselves Students for Change held a protest on the steps of Liberty University's Student Center, calling on Mr. Falwell to submit to an investigation of his many accusations, or the many accusations that have been levied against him. Well, today I'm happy to have one of those students with us here in the studio on Clean Slate. In fact, our guest was the organizer of that student protest. She's a junior at Liberty University who has spoken on record to several media sources in the last couple of weeks. She's calling for greater accountability and transparency from Mr. Falwell, and she's here today to give us her perspective on this heated controversy. And her name is Miss Elizabeth Brooks. Elizabeth, it's good to have you on Clean Slate today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here.
Yes, it's good to have you. And we'd like to start off our sessions getting to know our guests a little bit. Okay. So tell us a little bit about Elizabeth Brooks' family, where you're from, your major, what you want to do with your life, those types of things.
So I'm born and raised in Lynchburg. Right. I've been in this area for forever, probably going to live here until the day I die. My family's from here too. My dad's a pastor, so I'm born and raised a pastor's kid too, so that's been fun. But I've been at Liberty for going on 2.5 years now, junior now. Politics and policy is my major, so I'm hoping to go into some aspect of government. I'd really like to go into human rights law, specifically children's law, looking to be a guardian ad litem, something like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you're kind of an organizer or a leader in this group, Students for Change. Tell us about that group.
So Students for Change is something that was born a little bit earlier in the year. We were hoping to kind of get a group together that focuses on biblical advocacy, because so often these advocacy groups are so far to the left, far to the right, something like that. So we really wanted to keep it true to the word. So that's where Students for Change originated. And then it kind of came together, especially the couple nights before the protest, and we all got together and we called ourselves Students for Change. So we like that name a lot. We're hoping to stick with that.
All right, so this is a new name.
It's
new.
It's brand new.
All right. So obviously, Students for Change, you organizing this, led a protest on Friday, September 13th, just going on about a week and a half ago. Almost 2 weeks ago. Tell our guests what event or what events led you all to say, hey, we need to speak out. We need to have a protest. Yeah. What was the catalyst?
Honestly, looking back over the past summer, like you mentioned before, every single month this summer there was a new article. There's something new about President Falwell. There's something new that he's done, and it's kind of like, when is it going to end? So then this Politico article drops, and I'm sitting in my first class, my 815, and I read it, and I'm like, this is groundbreaking. This is new. This is nothing like the past allegations. Start reading, especially the ones on Becky, the business dealings, But honestly, the one that got me the most was the ones about the sexual harassment in the office, and that's what I would call it.
Right.
Because even if it is between a man and his wife, the business is not a place to discuss that specifically. But then, of course, the Reuters article drops where he speaks of a student and calls him retarded. And that is absolutely heartbreaking for me. I have many friends with disabilities who go to Liberty, and to hear that the president would refer to a student as that, I mean, it's honestly just so disheartening to hear.
Right. So the things that you mentioned most vehemently just now, I think, were the indiscretions in the office. You called that sexual harassment.
I would. Yeah, I would venture to say that.
Why so? Why do you call it that?
I've been a victim of sexual harassment, sexual assault myself, and it starts that way.
Gotcha.
It starts as jokes. It starts as just talk, and then I believe it leads to something more in my history. But you don't. I think that also speaks to a larger culture at Liberty with sexual misconduct. As you can see in the news, there's been professors that have had to retire or have been let go because of it. Yeah. And I think that it becomes a pattern.
Right.
And I think that you can't get away with it in the university's highest office if other people aren't doing it as well.
Right. You mentioned the emails and calling students. What did you say?
It's retarded.
Retarded,
yeah.
That's right. And then he called one of his own employees a half-wit.
Yeah.
Why is this a problem? Because, a lot of people in their emails, they'll say things joking around. Why do you consider that such a problem?
I really think it's inappropriate, especially to use a slur like that, because, that's definitely, it's not the 80s anymore.
Right.
It's definitely not appropriate in pretty much any setting.
Yeah.
But especially not only students, but you mentioned employees as well. And I think that, if my superior called me that, I'd be having a problem. I don't know if I'd be able to work there anymore, and I think it's strange that it was just kind of dusted under the rug as, it's just business. It's just business dealings. This is how we talk to people.
Right.
And I think that it certainly doesn't show Christ-like respect. We're made in Christ's image, and we're supposed to respect each other as God's creation. And I certainly don't think you see that.
Wow. And I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
I think in all of our interactions and relationships, we need to remember Genesis 1:26.
Right.
We're made in the image of God. It's a great point. And we're made, and we're supposed to respect one another in front of the cameras and behind the cameras.
And I think that you can definitely see a shift in President Falwell's behavior when has to do his PR moves, and when he doesn't have to.
Yes.
Have you seen his Twitter?
Well, there's not a lot on it in the last few days.
Really?
He hasn't tweeted a lot. Well, he tweeted some stuff about the football game this weekend.
Did you see? So this speaks to my point. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but the day of the protest, he tweeted to us and said, "So proud of Liberty University students and how he conducted himself."
I saw that, and then
the next one was a meme.
I saw that.
So I definitely think that you can see a pattern in his behavior. I don't think this is like a one-time thing. I definitely think that there's enough paperwork, there's enough records to show what's going on.
Wow. Do you think this behavior is harming the reputation of Liberty University? And is it even expanding out and harming the reputation of the church?
Absolutely.
And what I mean?
Absolutely. This is terrible, but a couple of our friends and I joke that the more Jerry tweets, the less of our value of our degree goes. It's a brief way to put it, but it is, because you don't want your president of your university continually and habitually doing something like this and not facing any sort of repercussions. Because I'm sure if you go to Pensacola or Wheaton or any other Christian college, I'm sure that these allegations would not be let go as easily as they have been here.
Right.
And I think it's because of all the money we have. I think it's because it's becoming such a large institution. And I think that you're seeing Christianity become commercialized.
Yeah.
And I think it's really become marketable.
Wow.
And that's where the university is going, which is heartbreaking, because you don't want to see it fall to the wayside like many other Christian universities have, who've lost their mission and their goals. Absolutely. And I definitely think that with the leadership of President Falwell that we've seen, I definitely think it's headed that way.
Well, I hope I somewhat agree with you.
Yeah.
I hope you're wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
I definitely do.
But you're right. It's called, what I've heard people refer to it as is the leftward drift. And we saw it in some major, the oldest institution of higher education in America is Harvard.
Yeah.
The second oldest is William and Mary.
Yeah.
Right here in Virginia. And both of those have drifted way left. They were both, a lot of people don't know this, but they were both formed in America to train priests.
Right.
For ministry here in the new land. And look how far they've drifted left. And I agree with you. If we're not careful, if Liberty is not careful, that leftward drift could continue.
I believe it. I really do.
So your group, Students for Change, what are the goals of your group? What do you want to accomplish? And I'll ask you this specific question. Are you all looking to oust Jerry Falwell Jr. from leadership? Do you want him out? I mean, what's
Yeah.
your goal?
So we start with, like I said before, our group is rooted in truth, and that's what we're after here. We're wanting more accountability from President Falwell. We're wanting transparency in the office, because certainly you read these articles and you're like, I had no idea. So we're hoping for that, but we're really calling for an investigation. Really just want to see if these things are true, and if they're true, then we'll take the next step. So as of right now, we're not calling for him to resign. We're not calling for impeachment or anything like that.
Right.
Really just calling for an investigation into the truth.
So who would be the investigators? Who do you think would be the best to come in and investigate?
First, I'd like an internal investigation.
Okay.
But I don't know if you've seen or not, there's been a massive petition going on to get Mark Herring to investigate as well. I signed that. But
you heard it here, folks.
I signed it. My mom signed it, throwing her in there too. But yeah, no, I definitely think that it needs to start internal. I think that's how the Bible would handle it.
Yeah.
If you have a problem with another brother or sister, you go to them first. And I think that the university should, go to its own, see if they can handle it internally. If not, I do think that there needs to be a bigger one, specifically into the financial dealings, which I'm not an expert on those. There's
none of us are.
But you read them and you're like, can this be right? Is this okay? Is this moral? Is it, so like I said, I'm not an expert in business at all. Don't even pretend to be.
Well,
but
I'm not either. But I would think that an investigation at some point by the IRS, because they are the ones that oversee the 501c3 things, and that they would need to come in and say, hey, are things being operated the way they should? The second external investigator, I agree with you, internal's where you start. But the second external investigator, in my mind, would be the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, the accreditor of Liberty University, because all these things feed into accreditation. There are accreditation standards on the fiscal accountability of a university, accreditation standards on presidential leadership and those types of things. And I would think that the Southern Association would be interested in these, and I'll tell you why. Because Masters University and Seminary in California is undergoing investigations for similar things from the Western Association of Colleges and Schools.
I had no idea something like this existed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
interesting.
But I think it's a great perspective. I love that you all aren't calling. You're not jumping the gun and saying, hey,
no, right.
Jerry, get out of office. You're saying, let's do an internal investigation. Christians and Christians together saying, hey, are we doing the right things? I applaud you all for that.
Thank you.
But, there are going to be people on the outside, and there are people on the outside that are going to say, hey, come on, is all this really that bad? I mean, the guy's built a multi-billion-dollar university. He's obviously a great businessman. Look at the prosperity he's brought to Lynchburg, Virginia, the surrounding area, maybe even the state of Virginia. I mean, are these things really that bad? How would you respond to something like that?
For someone like me who's been raised in a very Christian household, very moral and ethical standards are very high, I think that you can't conduct business, you can't do anything without your faith.
Right.
And you can see there was a tweet this summer from Jerry Falwell that he doesn't keep the university Christian. That's, Pastor Nasser's job. And I don't think that's the correct perspective at all. You're president of the largest Christian university. Like, it's big.
Right.
It worries me. It scares me that you can just go out here and make as much money as you want and have no morals. And I don't think that that's a Christ-like aspect of it. There's a verse in the Bible that comes to my memory. It's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle than it is for a wealthy man to get into the gates of heaven, because you get so self-reliant and you can do all this on your own. And I think that the love of money truly is the root of evil. And you become so focused in the numbers, and you become so wrapped up in your own, I did this, I led this university, that you do take your morals away from that. And I think that's a very dangerous spot to be in. Right.
Well, you've only been affiliated with Liberty for roughly 3 years or so.
I went to LCA too, if that counts.
So about, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever years. And you probably didn't know a lot about the politics of the university and things like that. But I will tell you that, having been affiliated with the university for a while now, that previous presidents never made statements like that. And I remember, and I'll name them because I thought a lot of them, President John Borick was a former president of the university. He came from a business background, very much like Jerry Falwell's background. He wasn't a lawyer, but a business background, knew how to make money, those types of things. He never made a statement like that. He always led the university from a Christ-centered perspective. He wasn't a preacher and evangelist, so that wasn't his role. But he never made the statements, it's not my responsibility. He took a leadership role spiritually as best he could, and he did a great job. And
I think that's the whole point of being president of the university. You know how to do both. You can lead the school and you can make it wealthy however you need to. Excuse me. Remember that to keep your Christianity at its center. And I think that is a very dangerous part to come in when you take your Christianity, when you take it out of anything, when you take it out of politics, you take it out of everyday life. I think you have to keep it at the center. And, that's one of liberty's principles. The 6 foundational skills of liberty is to keep Christianity and its context at the center. Wow. And I think that is very difficult to stray away from that.
Absolutely. The Great Commission, everybody thinks that go and make disciples is an imperative. You probably know this, growing up with a Baptist minister as a father, but that is not an imperative. It's really translated as you go, make disciples. It's for all of us. So really, Mr. Falwell should be, as he's going about doing the business of the university, he should be working to make disciples. Right. So what's the mood on campus among the students in particular? We'll talk about others in a minute, but among the students, do you sense, and this is obviously your sense on this, but do you sense that there's generally support for Jerry Falwell? Is there generally not support for Jerry Falwell? Is there generally ambivalence towards Jerry Falwell? Yeah. What do you think?
I think that when the Politico article dropped, I saw personally more people than ever cared about it and were reading it, and people were reading it in class. People were looking at their neighbors saying, "Did you see this?" Friends of mine on the left and right wings of the political spectrum both cared equally. I have friends who were diehard Donald Trump supporters, and they're like, "This isn't right." So I think that there's a general consensus that something is going on, something is buzzing. I don't know. I would say it's split. I really would.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that do not support Jerry. There are a lot of people that do. Right. At our protest, we had counter protesters. There was 3 of them, right. But they were still there. And there is a support for him. Hey, he is our president. Yeah, he did some bad things, but look how good the university is doing. Like you said earlier, is it really that big of a deal? That would be the one that I would say most is that from that standpoint. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, there's the interview that I had with NPR. The student that was his whole mindset. Like, the university is doing so well. Is it really that big of a deal that he slips up and makes mistakes, or that he did something bad one time? And isn't there forgiveness and things like that? I would say that would be their more aspect of that. The people who don't support Jerry, a lot of them were more than in my group. Even there were people who were calling for to impeach and calling to oust him. And we're just got to keep it at the center. You got to keep it rooted in truth. And I think that is the goal and mindset. But I will say there has been a buzz on campus ever since it dropped. Yeah, there were we had about at the peak of the protest, we had about 200 people looking on, just coming to see what's going on, and that sizable amount coming right out of convo and just stopping and looking. Right. So we were proud of that.
That is, and you had about what I hear reports of 30 or 60.
35. We had 35 protesters.
Okay. All right.
In a span of 2 days, I was really impressed. It really started one night and then one day, and we had all these people come out.
This came out really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard a story. Tell me if this is true or not. That one of the counter protesters said, "Convince me." And somebody actually convinced him.
Yeah. So
is this true?
It's true. The guy who was leading the protest with me, his name is Ian Parrish. Right. And Ian was giving a speech up on the steps and was talking, and the guy was just sitting in a chair and had a sign that said, "Convince me, convince me." And you can watch, I think it was WSLS 10. You can watch the interview. The guy actually goes, I came here and I didn't agree with it. And then I actually listened to what they were saying. And yeah, that is right. We should have accountability. We are paying this a lot amount of money to be here. This is our president. We should care. So that was one of the most fascinating points of the day, I will say.
So 3 counter protesters came, 2 left.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Much.
33% conversion.
There was one, it was just, one just said, "I trust Jerry," and just stood there. So
that's awesome. Well, let's talk about faculty and staff. I know this isn't the world that you move around in a lot, but you probably have a sense of what I'm about to ask you. Accusations came out in the Politico article and other articles that Jerry fosters a culture of fear among the faculty and staff at Liberty University. What's your sense on that? You're dealing with faculty members day to day. You run into some staff members. You probably hear some buzz. Do you get the sense that that's true?
I do, absolutely. I mentioned to two of my favorite government professors, I won't name their names,
Right.
before I went and did this, and one of them asked me, like, are you sure this is a good idea? Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure that, like, this is right? And
Right.
she was just so concerned about, are you sure this is a good idea? Like, she's very, very concerned.
Concerned for you.
Concerned for me.
Right.
Worried. She said, she did say, I'd like make sure like none of the university professors' names are not attached. Like you don't want.
Right.
Yeah. So just make sure it's you, the students only.
Right.
The next professor that I spoke to we're very close. He's probably my favorite mentor. Really appreciate a lot he's done for me. But he said, you need to make sure you know the ramifications. And that was his whole mission.
What did he mean by that?
Legal ramifications, what LUPD can do, if Lynchburg police, what they could do, things such as that, where it would be legal to protest, know your protesting rights, sent me,
Gotcha.
and,
So about the protest proper.
Right,
Okay.
right. And make sure that, you obey. You obey whatever happens. If LUPD comes up and says disperse, you disperse immediately. Just stuff like that. But I did get warnings and kind of like hesitant feedback from them as well.
So let's turn this question just a little bit. Do you feel fearful day to day at Liberty?
Absolutely.
Because you've spoken
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. The day before I did this, I freaked out, and I live in the dorm, so I told my RA what was going on, and she was like, Elizabeth, you're insane. And she prayed for me, and it was just like, God protect her, be with her, things such as that. And I was terrified. I still am, because people now know my name. People know my face.
Oh, yeah.
It was everywhere.
I do.
Hey, aren't you the girl that protested Jerry? So yeah, I guess that's who I am now. But it is terrifying. I was worried I would lose my scholarships, because I went to LCA and I was the last graduating class
That's right.
that got the scholarships. And my family's not wealthy by any means. If we lost that, I probably wouldn't be able to afford to go to school. So I really felt that I was putting my education on the line.
Yeah. I suspect that if they'd pulled your scholarship, you'd find some support from people.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
Anyway, what about, so 35 people showed up. Do you think that number would have been higher if there weren't a culture of fear among the student body?
Absolutely. I have two roommates, and both of them were like, Elizabeth, we support you in what you're doing, but we will not be there. Just, I don't want to get in trouble. I had, this is funny, the girl, it was me and another girl who started this. Can't mention her name because of this.
I understand, yeah.
Because she started receiving text and messages from the Falwell family.
Really? Tell us about those.
Yeah.
As much as you can tell us.
Yeah. Messages like, hey, we know you. You grew up around us. How could you do this to us? From extended family, from immediate family, just things like, you know us. How could you do this? Wow. So she called me in tears saying, I can't do this anymore. And she had made all the signs. We bought all the food together. We already had everything ready, and we lost all of that. So we took a huge hit. Only it was less than 12 hours before we were supposed to go do this. All because we had this fear that was put in her that, you're going to be shunned if you do this.
So, just for our viewers.
Yeah.
So you're paying how much per year to be a student at Liberty University? What's tuition these days? I know you're on scholarship, but
$25,000.
Okay,
something like that.
So you and your fellow students are paying $25,000 a year to go to Liberty University, and you're fearful to state the truth. You're a paying customer, as it were,
Yes.
and you're fearful to state the truth.
Absolutely. There's a clause in the Liberty Way that I was most worried about, and it spoke on respecting your professors, respecting your deans, respecting people who are higher up than you.
Right.
And if you violate that, you can face expulsion.
Okay. So speaking out, in other words,
Yeah.
how you interpret that is speaking out.
That's exactly how I read it, and it's so loosely worded that it can apply to anything. It can be like, oh, I hate this professor, he's terrible, or like, hey, we think Jerry Falwell is not doing a good job.
So question, I know demerits are still part of the Liberty Way. Have you gotten any demerits because of this?
I got a parking ticket, but I was parked illegally, so I don't
Okay.
think that counts.
Yeah, that
but
doesn't
it was
count.
the morning of the protest.
That doesn't count,
It
Elizabeth.
doesn't
Sorry.
count. I'm just upset that I have to park so far away. No, I have not. Luckily, there was one news article where it was Directive Communications came out and said there will be no ramifications for those who decide to exercise their rights. I don't remember which one that was at. And I can say this now because we're 2 weeks departed.
Sure.
We actually had support of student government. We had support of the president, vice president, and the chief of staff. We're all in support of us saying if anything happens, we will what's the word I'm looking for? Appeal it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, no matter what happens, like we can appeal it if anything bad happens. But
Okay.
we actually had the backing of student government. So
Good.
that felt good. We weren't allowed to say anything at the time, just
Very good.
for different reasons. But yeah.
So you think student government then, SGA, is sensitive to
Absolutely.
your cause?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's good.
They
I mean,
actually,
that's
I
good
actually got an
support.
apology saying we're sorry, we're not doing something faster.
Oh, wow.
So that was one of the best reasons and one of the reasons I decided to continue doing what I was doing, just because we had that support.
Now, I know you can't name names, but have any professors, staff members, anybody in official capacity at Liberty reached out in support and said, we're behind you?
No,
No, even unofficially?
nope.
No.
I'm my academic advisor.
Well, I'm a former faculty member and dean. I support you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I've had a lot of alumni support,
Yeah.
Like more than I ever imagined.
What
more
about
than
parents?
student.
Any parents?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think about parents? Do you have any sense on how parents are envisioning this thing?
My boyfriend's parents weren't too happy when they found out
Weren't happy about what?
that I was the one doing
Oh.
it. My parents were super proud of me and were like,
Yeah.
hey, we wish you could have been there, but both of us work.
Right.
My best friend's parents wanted to come as well because they are both alumni. My dad's an alumni. And a lot of them were like, we've seen the shift since we've been there, and you can watch it happen. I think parents are very divided, though.
Right. Well, like students are. Probably.
Absolutely. Especially when you go on Facebook. And I think Facebook is just so toxic. There's such it's being made political. And if you support Jerry, then you do like Trump and you're good. And if you don't, then you're a liberal. There's a very divisive stance. And I want to make that totally clear. It has nothing to do with Trump.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
You opened that door wide
Yes.
open. Let's talk about that. So you hear this so much, and I even heard Mr. Falwell say this on was it Sebastian Gorkin's radio show that
Sorry, I rolled my eyes at the camera.
that's okay. But if you speak out against Jerry, then you're suddenly you're a left winger, you're a liberal, you're anti-Trump. You believe that's true?
No, I'm a conservative. I've voted Republican my entire life, ever since I could vote. Going on 3 years now.
So you're a Republican.
I'm a Republican.
You're a conservative.
I'm conservative.
Evangelical Christian.
Exactly.
Yet you oppose what Jerry Falwell
I
is
do,
doing.
because it's immoral.
Right.
It's as simple as that. And I won't speak too much on my political views, and you can probably edit this out if you want to, but I don't support Trump for the same reasons.
Right.
I think he's immoral. I don't like the
Right.
assault, the sexual assault, sexual harassment allegations, just because I've personally been through that.
Right.
So same kind of thing. I can still hold true to my Christian beliefs and my Christian values and my political values, but I can still support someone who's wrong. And our protest has nothing to do with Trump. It has nothing to do. It really doesn't at all.
Well, I think that's a great point to make in your case. I think it's a great point that we need to make for a lot of the people who've spoken out either on the record or off the record, that just because you speak out against an individual doesn't mean you're speaking out against an ideology.
Exactly.
We can still be conservative, we can still be evangelical, we can still be Christian, but speak out against individuals within the conservative evangelical Christian church, right?
Right.
Is that what you're
Absolutely.
saying? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So here's I'm sure something that's near and dear to your heart. So critics of Jerry Falwell, there are many of them out there. I mean,
Yeah.
just read the comments at the bottom of the articles. But so many of them don't say Jerry, they say Liberty University. Liberty's getting lumped in with Jerry Falwell and all the things that he's doing. How would you respond to some of those critics?
It's first of all, I'd like to say it's heartbreaking because like I said, I've been here. I've watched the new stadium be put up. I've watched Liberty grow so much from when it was DeMoss and the Vine Center, and I've watched everything pop up, and I've personally benefited. My family's benefited from Liberty being here, and to watch the university and the values that it stood for since 1971 be thrown in with this man who I believe is very immoral and not doing a good job. I would caution that. I would say look at the university's past. Look at the things that Liberty does. Look at the LU Send trips. Look at how much missions Liberty does. So I would caution that. But it is happening. Liberty is who its president is. A lot of universities are like that, especially when your president is so outspoken.
Yes.
And his name is got a lot of buzz to it.
Yeah.
So I would definitely caution that, because I don't think Liberty is the place that Jerry Falwell is.
And I don't either, because I happen to know a lot of the faculty, obviously being there for 15 years and being on faculty. I know a lot of the faculty members. I know what goes on in those classrooms. I know the students and where they come from and their hearts and what they want to do for Christ. And when you look at all that, I want to tell people that this is a good university.
Go to Convocation.
It's full of wonderful people who are doing wonderful work.
Go to campus community worship one night with Liberty, and you'll see it's not the place that you're reading about in these articles. Just worship with us as students, and you'll see. Because I think that's the true heart of Liberty, is that pure, unadulterated worship that the university has. And I think that it's being so muddled between the lines of political ideologies and business deals.
Yeah. Well, I won't name this journalist because she might not want me to say her name, but I was speaking to a journalist the other day, and we were both watching the Convocation. I guess it was Wednesday evening. And
the one on honor?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she said, she texted me and said, I can see why students want to go to this university. She goes, this is awesome.
It is. Truly. It's
amazing. It is amazing. And I've been to many of those convos, and it is. It's a spiritual powerhouse.
Oh, yeah.
But these things.
We had Michael W. Smith last week. We had Mac Powell, a leader of Third Day. It was amazing, And then we talked about UFOs in combo.
The hollow earth theory, UFOs going in and out of the earth. Last question for you. And this is really a central question, I think, to our interview, and that is, what's your hope for Liberty University? If you had the crystal ball and you could influence the future, what would be your hope?
I definitely hope that Liberty University stays the place that it is, that the worship we talked about, I hope that never changes, and I hope that it doesn't have that leftward drift. I hope it stays right center along the path that Christ leads it to. I would pray that Jerry Falwell Sr. and his leadership would continue posthumously after his death, and just continue on that. Yeah. Because if it is Christian, it should be better,
That's what he said.
And it is. And it really is. Yeah. I had the opportunity to go to many public universities, and I chose Liberty because it's a beautiful place. You can walk on the campus and feel the light. You can feel the love of Christ. And I would really just hope that what President Falwell is doing now would not harm that in any way.
And I think you said something a little bit ago, and I want to ask you this particular question because I think I know your answer. But the hope would be that he would repent.
Yeah.
Receive forgiveness.
Forgiveness is key.
And move forward as the president of the university, right?
Right. And like I said before, it's not like we're trying to oust him. If you did something wrong as a Christian, we're all human. We make mistakes. It's our sin nature. Just have some semblance of humility and admit you have a problem. Admit that you made a mistake and continue. That's really just what we want, is we just want him to say, I know that these things have come true. I know that these things seem bad. I'm sorry. As your university president, I apologize.
Yeah.
That's all we want.
Repentance, forgiveness, and we move on.
There you go.
Well, I think that's a good note to stop on today.
I do too.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you all for being with us on Clean Slate today for this special episode about the LU, Liberty University student protest. I think you would agree with me that Miss Elizabeth Brooks is a very intelligent young lady, has a good perspective, a lot of wisdom on this, and I hope you've heard her heart. It's not a heart of anger or bitterness towards Jerry Falwell or anyone else. It's a heart of, hey, we want to forgive you. We want you to move on. We want you to be successful in the name of Christ, for Christ. And folks, that's really what we want on Clean Slate. That's what all of our episodes are about. Let's find the problems that are in the church, and let's work to solve them. Not destroy people, but work to solve the problems, to make the church everything that it's supposed to be in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Well, folks, I hope you'll join us for our next episode. Our Season 3 doesn't begin until January of 2020, but we'll have some more special episodes like this over the next few months. I hope you'll join us for those. Keep a watch on our Facebook site and our YouTube channel. We're so grateful that you're here with us today. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. And God bless you in all that you do. We here on Clean Slate, again, we talk about the real issues of the church with real people through real talk. We'll see you next time.